morning, everyone. It's really lovely to be here this morning. And the theme of my talk is really around resilience. Oh, thanks, thank you. As long as I don't knock it over. Thank you. So I thought I would start by sharing a little joke with you about a very resilient elderly lady. An elderly lady in her late 80s was getting married for the fourth time. And she was doing a radio interview for the local radio station, and the presenter asked her to tell him a little bit about her life and what it felt like to be married again for the fourth time at this stage of life. So she chatted away to him and she said, "Yes, dear, it's so lovely, you know, I'm so happy to be getting married again, you know, at this late stage, and my new husband is a funeral director." So he said, "Well, that's very interesting. Oh, sorry. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your other three husbands and what they did for a living?" So she said, "Yes, dear." She says, "You know, it was lovely." And he said, "Yes, you must be very resilient, you know, to have overcome, you know, being widowed on 3 occasions and on each time having, you know, the get up and go to go out and find happiness and get married again." So she says, "Yes, you see, in my 20s, I married a banker. In my 40s, a circus ringmaster. In my 60s, a preacher. And now in my 80s, a funeral director." And he said, "My goodness," he says, he was quite shocked. What made you marry 4 men with such diverse careers?" And she said, "It was 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and 4 to go." Thank you. So there we are, ladies. Now you have the formula. I was in my school years, and I always enjoyed sport. And at school, I played hockey and netball, but I was also heavily involved in swimming and life sailing. I just never had the opportunity to try water skiing. But when I was 17, I met a chap called Paul Gray, and Paul was a water skier, but unfortunately, he was out of his sport due to an injury. Then at the age of 21, I had my first horrific and traumatic life-changing experience as I lost my sight totally and quite suddenly due to a very rare eye disease. And so I went from being just that normal, outgoing, happy, confident, independent girl to being a very, very sad, frightened and vulnerable individual. And being plunged into that world of total darkness, I thought, oh, well, life was over, and sport, well, that was totally out the window, because what could I possibly do as a blind person? And at that stage of my life, I had some very difficult decisions to make. And one of those was having to sell my beloved wee red Mini, because not only was it my pride and joy, it was my whole symbol of independence. And I soon realized if I wanted a little bit of independence back, I was going to have to learn to use a white cane. And that absolutely filled me with dread. So it did take some time before I finally plucked up the courage and went off and did the mobility training course to use the cane. I passed with flying colours and was soon deemed safe to be let loose on my own. And I remember one December getting the bus into the centre of Belfast to do some Christmas shopping. Well, you know how it is in the run up to Christmas. The streets and the pavements and shops are absolutely packed normally. And as I battled my way down Donegal Place towards the front door of M&S, it felt I was getting more and more frustrated because it seemed like every other person was tripping over my cane. So as I approached the front door of the store, my cane got caught, this time on an obstacle. And I thought, oh, what now? But as I'd been trained, I moved it backwards and forwards about 1.5 feet in this gap, and then up and down about 2.5 feet. And I thought, probably an advertising board on the pavement. So I got in the door, and as I waited for an assistant to help me with my shopping, a girl that I knew came in the door behind me, and she could hardly speak to me for laughing. And I said, "Hello, Jackie, how are you?" She says, "Oh, Janet Gray, you've half of Donegal Place in fits of laughter." And I said, "Well, what have I done?" She says, "You know the way you got your hand stuck in something outside?" And I said, "Yes." Was it an advertising board? She said, "No, you were thrashing it about between the policeman's legs." Well, you know, I was absolutely mortified, and he didn't even speak to me. So I came to the conclusion that either he was far too embarrassed or he was enjoying the experience too much. Anyhow, I made sure I would out the door of M&S that day. I didn't want to be arrested for assaulting a policeman. But I married this fellow, Paul Gray, and Paul's uncle was visiting one day. And he said to Paul, "You know, look, you haven't water skied in a few years now. Why don't you come down to the lake at the weekend?" So off we went, and I got into the boat when Paul was going out to ski, and Uncle Jimmy drove, and Paul, the hubby, put 2 ropes out the back. He basically went out on a second rope beside me, grabbed me by the top of the life jacket, and told me when to stand up. And I got up and did 3 laps of the lake with him. And it was absolutely awesome. I just loved the whole speed, the rush, and the exhilaration of this fabulous extreme sport. And the second time I went out to ski, I asked if it would be possible for me to ski out there on my own. And that was the turning point in my life, because out on the water, I felt that sense of freedom that I didn't have on land. And I regained a little of my self-confidence as I realized, well, here's a sport that I really could do as a blind person. And that's when my life began again. And Paul and I joined the local water ski club, Meteor, and I learned to ski. And in 1997, I went on my first international tournament. It was the European, African, and Middle East Championships, and they were being held in Denmark. And we went off, you know, I was absolutely petrified, but excited at the same time, not knowing what to expect. But I did better than any of us ever expected, taking a silver in the slalom and a bronze in the tricks. We have 3 different disciplines in water skiing: slalom, trick, and jump. The slalom is done on a long, thin ski, and you stand with one foot behind the other. The top boat speed for ladies is 34 miles per hour, but the boat goes down the center of the slalom course. So when I get the signal, I cut for the gates, and as you ski out to the right and turn around buoy 1, and then scoot right across to the left, turn around 2, and weave your way around those buoys as you go down the course. The skiers actually travel 1/2 times faster than the boat speed. And when you come off at 80 odd miles an hour, well, water suddenly feels like it's made of concrete. You tend to bounce a bit. But tricks are done on a much shorter, broader ski and at a much slower speed. And you learn all sorts of tricks. You ski backwards, do lots of rotations, passing the handle and rope, and cut into the wake and spin in the air and land, etc. But each trick has a points value. And so the more difficult the trick, then the higher the points. Jump is the pretty dangerous one. And it's mandatory for all blind and visually impaired skiers to have a jump guide. As you hurtle towards this great big ramp in the middle of the lake at speed. So the jump guide goes out on a second rope. He travels on my right. And once we turn at the top of the lake, we enter the jump course with the marker boys, and he'll call the 210 meter, the 180 meter. Then once he calls the 100, I count 1, 2, and accelerate out to the left towards the bottom of the ramp. He makes sure I'm lined up and gives me the count onto the ramp. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And he follows behind the boat. I go up over the ramp through the air and hopefully meet up with him on the other side with me the right way up. But as it is petrifying, you go through the whole range of emotions in jump, because you know you're going towards this great big solid object at speed, and if it goes wrong, it goes very badly wrong. And so, you know, you're absolutely petrified. you hold your breath, and as you go up over the ramp through the air, and when you land, your first emotion is relief. And then the big buzz kicks in as you scale away. So you just go through that whole range. But it's very exciting. But in 1999, I went off to the World Disabled Water Ski Championships in London. And it was very exciting for me because it was my debut as a free event skier, which means that when you compete in all three of the disciplines of slalom, trick and jump, you then have a chance at the big title, which is the overall world champion title. But I was very much a beginner in the sport. And so I went along just hoping to make it through to each of the finals and not disgrace myself too much. But things went a lot better than I could ever have imagined, as I won the Worlds for the first time, taking 3 gold, 2 silver, a world record, and a host of European and Irish records. It was just unbelievable. Suddenly, and so unexpectedly, I was world champion. But it didn't take long for the feet to come firmly back to earth, as I realized that whilst it was fabulous to be the best in the world, if I wanted to remain at the pinnacle of my sport, I was going to have to work twice as hard. And that really worked because with the help of some lottery funding in 2000, my hobby of water skiing became that full-time career. And that paid off because the Worlds were every 2 years. And in Australia in 2001, I brought home all the titles and regained those again in America in 2003, breaking the world record in each of the disciplines into the bargain. So it all started to go well. The life of an elite athlete's often perceived to be a very glamorous one, you know, as you jet off around the world for training and competition. But our season is home from April to October, and it's a very tough and demanding schedule in reality, because when I was in competition, I had to try and train on the lake 6 days per week, weather permitting. Then I attended the Sports Institute 3 times a week at Jordanstown for sort of strength and conditioning, physio, nutrition, etc. And then each of the months in season, I had to be in England training intensively with the team coach for about 10 days. So it was certainly all go. And then when competitions and things were over, in the off season, in the winter months, we had to go abroad to train. And the independence that I had gained with my white cane allowed me to travel to America on my own. And by learning every step and memorizing my way around the lakes and the school buildings, I was able to be independent on site. I would have marked my skis with a little clear braille dymo as well on the front of them, then put them all on the ski rack in a position where I knew I could go straight to them and find them. But it was March of 2004, and I was out winter training at water ski school in Tampa, Florida. It was awful, you know, having to go there over the winter for 3 months, but just had to be done. But everything was going really well. And after the success of the '03 Worlds, it finally felt that everything was coming together. You know, my career was finally settling down and life was good. But that all changed in a split second, because I left the dock behind the boat on what should just have been a routine training exercise around the lake, when suddenly and without warning, I was whipped at very high speed into the back end of that great big metal ramp in the middle of the lake. It wasn't good. I was airlifted alone and fighting for life to the Tampa General Hospital. I'd sustained multiple injuries and was on life support. On the right side of the body, I broke and dislocated the hip, the pelvis. I crushed the head of the femur with quite a bad compound to the femur. I broke the patella, the ankle on the left, the elbow on the left was broken and dislocated, as was the thumb, and rib injuries, crush injuries, and then head injuries. And I think the worst nearly for me was I felt like I lost my identity because my face took full impact and the cheekbones, eye sockets, nose and jaw were all badly broken. I lost several teeth and most of my life's blood. I just should have told you what it didn't break. It would have been much quicker. As my poor hubby was home here in Northern Ireland when he got the call from the doctors in Tampa General, and they said they were very sorry, but I had already arrested 4 times and I wouldn't be alive by the time he flew out. But, you know, the doctor said I wouldn't survive, and thank the Lord I did. They also said that such were the extent of the injuries that it was impossible for me to walk again. And I'm back on my feet. And the medical profession in the sporting world thought that was it. What a shame, ski career was over. But they were wrong. I was the only person who truly believed that, and really within myself, I truly believed that I would walk again, because I had come out the other end of sight loss and fought so hard to regain a little bit of independence. So I was now damned if I was going to be left totally blind in a wheelchair and dependent on others for the rest of my life. So I dug deep for that resilience that had brought me through slight sight loss. And for the next 3 years, I fought harder than I've ever fought for anything in my life before. But you know, the blood, sweat, the pain and the tears were all worth it. Because in 2007, not only did I make it back on my feet, but I got back on my ski. And I went off with Team GBNI to the 2007 World Championships in Townsville, Australia. This was to be my ease back tournament, you know, no pressure, absolutely no pressure. But when we arrived down under, we discovered that our biggest rivals, Australia and America, both had full teams of 14 skiers. We could only afford to take a small team of 7, and we were the title holders. And if we wanted to hold on to that coveted top team title, well, each of us was going to have to produce winning performances. So, you know, no pressure, but we did. We dug down hard and we fought back, and I must admit, we reigned victorious, and I regained all my titles, bringing the 5 gold medals home to Northern Ireland. It was just super. It was just great to be back and to meet up with all those lovely friends and skiers from around the world that I thought I'd never see again. Unfortunately, the ongoing injuries and multiple rounds of surgery to put me back together again were all taking their toll on the body. And it's just getting harder and harder to keep pushing the body at top level all the time. Plus the fact I wasn't getting any younger. But I made the decision to retire out of international in 2012. And I wasn't too sure really what I was going to do next. I'm a mentor and mind factor coach, so I thought I might do a little bit of that and the motivational speaking. But then a new opportunity arose when I was approached and asked if I would consider running in the 2014 local council elections. Well, I was absolutely flabbergasted. Me, who had not got the first notion about politics or anything. But in 2009, Lisburn City Council had conferred the freedom of the city upon me, and it's the highest honour that a city can bestow. And I thought, well, you know, I'm very much a people person, and I'm looking for a new challenge. And wouldn't it be lovely if I was to be elected? It would be a nice way to give back to the council and to the local community. So, you know, when you're a woman and blind to boot, opportunity doesn't knock very often. So I grasped it with both hands and did my best, and was delighted to be elected then to the new Super Council of Lisburn and Causeway City in May of 2014. One of the first things I had to do, you know, on becoming was find my way around the civic centre. So I went in with the orientation officer that I did the white cane training with, and we went in and we took each floor at a time, breaking the routes down into just small pieces and looking for landmarks and things, so as I could then navigate my way around each of the floors. And before long, I was running about the place with my cane, which was super. And technology has moved on tremendously in the last few decades. And so, like my fellow members, I used the iPhone, iPad, and received all the papers on the iPad, etc., for the meetings. But there's a built-in accessibility feature called VoiceOver, and that actually turns the text on the page into Braille, or into voice, good grief, into voice. And so I was able then to access all the papers and email and do all the usual things. I really enjoyed my term on the council. It was lovely to be able to help your constituents just on a daily basis with various issues, and then to deliver larger projects for both your district and for the council in general. So it was good. But at the end of the 5 years, I then took all that experience and knowledge with me, and I applied for the Northern Ireland Policing Board. And it was lovely to be appointed there just back in April of 2020. But of course, COVID had just struck at that point, and we were all in the first big lockdown. So for the new members on the board, like myself, it was very, very difficult because, of course, we couldn't meet face to face. Everything was having to be done over Zoom, and we weren't able to do production training or the training courses we should have had. So it was a very steep learning curve. But they say every day is a school day, and it certainly is. And I think it's been a very difficult period over the last couple of years for everyone, but we've all become more resilient, and we've had to adapt to new ways of working, whether it be from home or the hybrid version, or having to get to grips with more IT and become a bit more IT savvy as we learn to use the various media platforms such as Zoom, WebEx, etc. I really enjoy my work on the board. It's pretty full on, and I'm vice chair of the largest committee, so that keeps me out of mischief. But it's a whole new chapter and challenge in my life. And I suppose we all face challenges as we go through life. It might be health problems, it could be financial worries, the stresses and strains of relationships, or just problems in the workplace. But everybody gets something to deal with. And I always think it's not the size of the problem that matters. The most important thing is our attitude towards it and how we actually deal with it. And I've learned from my experience that when you come to that storm or crisis in your life, well, you have two options. You can lie down, crawl into bed, pull the quilt over your head and hope it all goes away. But the toughest option is to pick yourself up, dust yourself down, take a step back and assess the situation you're in. And then you can start to plan where you want to go to next. And once you've made your mind up and you've set that goal, then you can break the pathway to that goal down into just small achievable portions. And just, I suppose, keeping focus and being determined to succeed, you will succeed. There's a lovely old Danish proverb I'm going to finish with, and it states that life doesn't consist of having a good hand of cards, but how we actually play a bad hand well. And that's very true. I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Kevin and the committee of U3a for inviting me along today. It's lovely, and it's great to see, as I say, some of my friends supporting me today that are members of U3a, and Hilary and Mona are here from the Seabirds. We swim off the strand in the mornings, and it's fabulous. But thank you all very much, and I'm really looking forward now to taking questions from the floor. So please do not be shy. Please just ask away. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. That was brilliant. Absolutely. So inspired. It's wonderful. Have we any questions from the floor, please? Pamela, on your right, William.
Dr. Gray, thank you for coming this morning and sharing with us an amazing, amazing and inspirational story.
Thank you.
I will never complain again.
There's no harm in complaining. Just usually doesn't do much good.
I was wondering, when you lost your vision, did your other senses of touch and smell, did they become more sensitive as some sort of compensation?
Yes, I think that we all of that, 90% of your life is visual. And so you don't need to hone and rely on the other senses when you have vision. So I think it's just, they were sort of latent. And when needs must, you start to learn, to especially listening, your hearing's so important. And even when you're out and about, your sense of touch, even through your hands and your feet, are very, very important. So it's just really needs must. I had to own those other senses and bring them to the fore. But it's amazing what you can do when you have to do it.
Thank you. At the front here, my Spanish chum, mi amiga.
Hola.
Buenos días. I'm absolutely inspired by your talk, Dr. Gray. And it made me think actually of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. She did it backwards, and you've knocked Ginger Rogers off the dance floor. But your talk is absolutely wonderful. Taking you back to your initial talk, just struck me from a technical point of view. I'm not going to say a water ski because it'd be a shame, now listening to you, but in the slalom, you were talking about the slalom and in the how did you know when to turn and go back? Is that too technical?
No, it's lovely to have the opportunity to explain what we do. In slalom, you learn the rhythm like other skiers, but because we can't physically see the boys, we have a device, a computerized device that goes on the ski pole of the boat. The rope is fed into it, and so whenever I get the whistle to start, I cut for the gate and make my turn and then scoot out for boy one, which is out on the right. So whenever I cross the wakes and the rope comes directly behind the boat, it's measured so that triggers the gate approach. Then when a ski out, you've got to ski wide enough to make the device bleep because it measures the angle of the boy. So you get a loud audible bleep, and you've got to then scoot back across, get the 6 bleeps in, which are the 6 boys, and get out the gates because it's all timed. It's identical to a sighted skier running. It's all calibrated identically. So, you've just got to learn that rhythm. And then when you run top speed and you start to shorten the rope, because we start on an 18.5 meter rope. And then once you run top speed at 18, you then take 2 meters off and you've got a shorter rope, but the same distance to get out. So you've got to accelerate harder. So then you go from 16, if you run it, you go to 14, then it gets pretty scary when you're going 13, 12, you're getting closer to the back of the boat. But yeah, the device is fabulous. It's called an audio slalom device, but the blind skiers, we affectionately call it the back blaster because it's for the blind bats. Thank you. Hope that explains things a little. Thank you.
Great. Not only have you met a wonderful challenge in your life early on, it's been a continual series of challenges. Now, it might be that resilience that you have, you invented for yourself, but do you think of anywhere the sources of that resilience in your early life? Where did that come from? What happened that gave you that resilience before you faced those challenges?
Thank you, and please just call me Jana. My father lost his sight when I was very young. I was only 5 years old, and it's a very, very rare eye disease, and it struck my dad. And, with a mortgage and starting a young family, then it was tough for my parents because my dad could no longer drive and he had to to go back out to work and support the family. So I suppose my dad has been always a role model, of just having to get up and get on with things. And I think I got a lot of that from him. Thank you.
Janet, good morning. Thank you
Good
very
morning.
much for a wonderful talk.
You're
Personally,
welcome.
it's been great for me to actually see you in the flesh, because I'm an ex-resident of Lisburn and I spent many, many years in the swimming pool looking at your 6-foot photograph on the wall. A rather facetious question, really. There's a great emphasis on bringing disability into the public life now, and I think that's great. And one of the things that happens, there's a lot of people here interested in dancing, and there's a new dancing group starting in U3a up here. I wondered if you'd ever thought of going on Strictly Come Dancing.
With 2 left feet, I don't think it'd be very good. Honestly. Yeah, but I suppose it's something, because if you're dancing with a partner, yes, it would be very possible. Yeah. Maybe a new challenge in the future. Thank you.
Janet, another question coming from the Zoom, one of the Zoom attendees. How did you cope with signing important papers or documents?
Well, really, because as I say, I didn't lose my sight until I was 21. So I can still, write and things, although I suppose nowadays everything's done on the iPad or the computer, you type. And thankfully I'd done all those typing exams through school and for the keyboards, but I can still sign my name. If someone just puts their finger on the page where I need to sign, then yeah, I just go ahead and sign it. I tried to think what it looks like, but they're happy. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah. Yes.
Hi, Janet, it's Hilary.
Hi.
I just want to ask you, you always look fantastic. And I just wondered, how do you sort out your clothes? I mean, I've seen you at the beach, you're that organized, you put me to shame. So I just wondered, is there something we could all learn from you?
Thank you, Hilary. Well, to be honest, whenever I could see, I have the colors in my head, so I know what blue looks like, or dark blue, or green, or red, or whatever. And, I'm very thankful that I visualize everything very much. And I was always quite fussy at matching and coordinating whenever I could be. So I've just never stopped doing that. And I suppose there's no set rule, when you lose your sight, of how you sort of sort yourself out. But I very much sort of organize myself with, when I get a new article of, item of clothing, I sort of feel it, and I know what it's like once it's described to you. And I would sort of sort the wardrobe with all the black trousers on one hanger, the navy ones on another, etc. And I hang things all up, and it's all memory. Everything's memory. And I have a wee fetish about handbags, like most women. And I maybe have about 10 or 12 varying shades of pink, from blush right through to, your raspberry, etc. And so if I get a new jacket or coat or blouse or something, of course, and new shoes, of course, they all come out of pink. All the pink ones come out in a big row, and I'm saying to the hubby, right, which one does this go best with? And we go along, and and he's quite good. And then I have to memorize that, so I know that I can go and put my hand on, whatever it is I need to match up with the outfit. So it's just all memory, really. And as I say, thankfully, I can still visualize the colors, and when things are described, it makes life so much easier. So yeah, I'm like an old fuss bird. Thank you, Hilary. Thank you.
Anyone else? I think there was some. This gentleman. Oh.
Well, Janet, I'm in awe of what you've achieved. It's been fantastic. But I wondered if you ever attempted to water ski on the sea, or is that too big a challenge, or is it not possible?
No, I actually have. I skied on the Red Sea in 1998. It was the European, African and Middle East Championships were held in Jordan, and it actually was very, very hot. It was in the 40s, and you know, I think it's the first time I'd felt the sea that warm, but it was a fascinating experience. You know, it's a lot tougher, and because the Red Sea is, you know, had so much salt content as well, the ski was quite buoyant. So, you know, it just put a different spin on things. Well, but it was the same for everyone. And I actually, whenever Christine Blakely, you may remember, she did her sports challenge, and she was going across the English Channel on a pair of skis, and I went out and trained her for the one show, and we did it. And my goodness, we practiced down at Portaferry, and we couldn't have got on a day in February, and the sea, it was like a mountain, you know. But yes, but funny, Hilary, Moda and myself were all swimming yesterday morning, and I think it must have been the calmest I've ever seen the sea. There was hardly a ripple. It was absolutely beautiful, and I kept thinking, oh, I could ski out there today. But we're back in season now, and at home we ski on the lake. So looking forward to getting started maybe next week. But thank you.
Very, very inspiring speech, and thank you very much for it. I think inspiring, particularly for us who majority of us are well sighted. Do you get involved with those who have lost their sight in a similar situation to yourself to help generate some of that motivation for them, that they can aspire to the similar aspects that you have achieved?
I do. I'm one of the founder members and former chair and director, and now currently president of Disability Sports Northern Ireland. And it's been fabulous to be involved from its concept. And you know, I'm so proud of the organisation. But we run so much now, and we've really grown. And I think because disability now is, you know, sport has come on leaps and bounds. And I suppose from as far back as the Sydney Olympics and Paralympics, then, you know, the profile was raised, and we're always pushing and fighting to raise the profile and introduce new sports to get people, even just to get out and get active recreationally, to take part. And I would run sometimes over the summer months, I would run courses at our lake at home. And we've had blind skiers out, deaf group, people with various physical disabilities. We have a big seat on top of a very wide ski, and we take them out, you know, so it's really great to be able to do that. And I'm also a mind and level 2 mentor. So I would do some counselling and mentoring just to other people who are maybe just losing their sight and going through a really tough time, and you know, talking through the fears and things with them. And it's always lovely to be able to do that, you know, because I've been there myself, and it makes such a difference, I think, when, you know, you have such empathy with someone, and you're able to sort of chat to them, and that there is life after sight loss. But I very much enjoy it. Thank you. Hello.
Swimming down at the Strand.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask you if by any chance you're in contact with Mark Pollock, because he had the similar challenge to you when he lost his sight, and indeed then his mobility. And I wondered, do you help each other really in building resilience? Because I think you both have given inspiration to so many.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, I know Mark quite well, and it's funny because lives were nearly on a parallel. We both lost our sight around 21, and then I had my big accident, and then unfortunately Mark had his, you know, and he's a lovely chap. I would have sent him, when he had his accident, lots of messages and things, you know, thinking of him and that. And I've done a few engagements where we've both been there, you know, and spoken, and it's lovely. But he's another terrific chap. He's just got up and got on with things. He's super. Thank you.
Anyone else? No, we're finished.
Thank you
That
all
was-
very,
yeah,
very much.
A big hand, that was absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mother. Thanks so much.
Yes, I'll take you back to Kevin. Oh, here comes the gentleman, he's coming for you. Thank you, Janet. Well, that was just wonderful, wasn't it? I just feel I must never complain at the committee meetings ever again. So thank you all for coming and have a nice day now. Thank you.